Next up in my series of season standings predictions for the 2021-22 NHL season, today we're going to be going over the Atlantic Division. If you missed the first video like this, I gave my predictions for the Pacific Division. I'll try to remember to leave a link to that video down below in the description, but if I forget, it's one of the more recent videos on the channel, shouldn't be too hard to find. And of course, I want to hear your guys' thoughts and your predictions as well, so be sure to get down there in the comment section down below. Let me know all of your predictions for the Atlantic Division for the upcoming season. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and get into my predictions. Finishing 8th place in the Atlantic Division, this is the easiest prediction I have ever made. The Buffalo Sabres will finish last in this division. I just find it really hard to picture a scenario where they're even remotely competitive. Sam Reinhart is gone, Linus Ullmark is gone, Ristolainen is gone, obviously Jack Eichel isn't going to be playing. If you're a Sabres fan, there's obviously still some reasons to watch. Rasmus Dahlin, Dylan Cousins, maybe if Jack Quinn makes the team, but overall I expect it to be a very rough year for the Sabres, kind of similar to the season the Red Wings had in 2019-20. I really do genuinely feel bad for Buffalo Sabres fans because that is a really good fan base. They're diehard fans, they really support their team, but that organization is just so poorly run. Next up we have the 7th seed, and I really went back and forth on this one. In the end, I'm deciding to go with the Ottawa Senators. I feel like I'm not quite as high on this team just yet as some other people. A couple of reasons as to why I have Ottawa finishing 7th and not 6th place ahead of the team we're going to talk about next is because, well, for one, they're not even going to start the season with their best player in Brady Tkachuk, and based off of all the reports that have been coming out about the negotiations between the Senators and Brady Tkachuk, it sounds like that could be a pretty long holdout. Another reason is because Colin White is out 4 to 6 months with an injury, which is a pretty big blow. I believe he got injured in a preseason game against Toronto. And the third and final reason I'll give you guys as to why I'm not quite as high on the Ottawa Senators as other people, and this is probably the biggest reason, is their goaltending. I am not a believer in Matt Murray. He hasn't been remotely good for years now, and when it comes to Anton Forsberg, well, he's just a mediocre backup. So on top of the other reasons I mentioned, goaltending is the biggest reason why I have the Ottawa Senators finishing behind the Detroit Red Wings, who I have finishing 6th place in the Atlantic Division. I know I'm probably going to get a ton of comments down below calling me biased for having the Red Wings ahead of the Ottawa Senators, but I really tried to keep all the bias out of it here. If I was being biased, I would have had Detroit ahead of Montreal. I mean, come on now. The Red Wings vastly improved over the offseason. Now, a lot of it was addition by subtraction, no longer having guys like Darren Helm, Valtteri Filppula, and Franz Nielsen playing, but Steve Yzerman filled those roster spots with some pretty solid players. Pius Suter, a huge upgrade at the 2C position from years past. Mitchell Stevens, who I think is going to be a useful bottom 6 forward. Nick Leddy, who I feel like immediately comes in and is Detroit's best defenseman. And then, of course, Alex Nedeljkovic, who I think was Detroit's biggest addition of the offseason. When you look at the Red Wings forward group and the defense core, especially with Jacob Vrana being out of the lineup, I don't think it's all that much better than the Ottawa Senators, if it's even better at all. The deciding factor for me between these two teams, again, it just comes back to goaltending. Detroit has two capable goaltenders in Nedeljkovic and Greiss that can steal you a game on any given night. Thomas Greiss did it a bunch towards the second half of last season, and obviously Nedeljkovic was one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL last year with Carolina. He led the league in goals against average and save percentage. Now, do I think Nedeljkovic is going to do that again this season with the Red Wings? Of course not. He's on a much worse team. The numbers are definitely going to come down, but I still trust him and Thomas Greiss more than Matt Murray. Moving on now to the 5 seed. So this is the last team from the Atlantic I have missing the playoffs. I have 4 teams making it from the Atlantic and 4 from the Metro. In 5th, I have the Montreal Canadiens. It kind of feels wrong to put Montreal here missing the playoffs after seeing what they just did in the playoffs in 2020, making it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, but I think it really just comes down to the divisions going back to normal. I can't see Montreal finishing ahead of any of the 4 teams I have ahead of them here. I don't think the Montreal Canadiens are going to be a bad team by any means. I think they're going to be competitive all season long, probably play some meaningful games down the stretch with playoff implications. I just can't see them getting in. They're going to be without their captain Shea Weber for the entire season. Obviously, we got the news yesterday that they won't be starting the season with Carey Price. He's entering the NHL Player Assistance Program, and let me just say, I wish Carey Price and his family all the best. It's never a bad thing. You should never be embarrassed to ask for help. Carey Price did it. If you're struggling, you can too. Now, taking a hard 90-degree turn from that, I still do really like Montreal's top 9 in terms of their forwards. I feel like they have a lot of good offensive weapons. I could honestly see 4, maybe even 5 Montreal Canadiens finishing with north of 20 goals this season, but when it comes to the rest of their team, and obviously given the circumstances, no Carey Price, no Shea Weber, I just think the 4 teams I have finishing ahead of them are much better. And getting into the top 4 seeds now, the teams I have from the Atlantic Division making the playoffs, finishing 4th place, getting into the playoffs in a wildcard spot, the Boston Bruins. Overall, I feel like the Bruins had a pretty good offseason. I like the addition of Nick Foligno. I think he's going to fit in perfectly as a Boston Bruin. I like them bringing in Linus Ullmark with the uncertainty when it comes to Tuukka Rask. He's still a UFA. He hasn't retired yet, but he hasn't signed anywhere. And I really like the Bruins bringing back both Mike Riley and Taylor Hall, who were trade deadline acquisitions from this past season, who both fit in pretty well in Boston. My one concern when it comes to the Boston Bruins is their center depth. Obviously, with David Krejci going over and playing in the Czech Republic, it left a pretty big hole that Charlie Coyle, I feel like, is now going to be expected to fill, who's coming off of a really bad season, but I feel like if he bounces back, he should at least be a competent 2C for the Boston Bruins. If Patrice Bergeron misses any extended period of time though, that's when I think things could get a little bit dicey for the Boston Bruins, and Bergeron is now 36 years old, so I feel like it's within the realm of possibilities. Other than the center depth though, which is really my only big concern with the Bruins, I like where they currently sit. I think they got a good team. Moving on now to the 3rd seed, I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this one, but I actually have the Tampa Bay Lightning finishing 3rd place in the Atlantic Division. Yes, they are the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, but they did lose a lot this offseason. That entire Gaudreau, Coleman, and Gord line, people bring that up a lot, but on top of that, David Savard left in free agency. They traded Tyler Johnson to the Chicago Blackhawks. And don't get me wrong, they're still going to be a really good team. I just kind of get the feeling that they're sort of going to coast through the regular season. Winning back-to-back Stanley Cups, that definitely has to take a toll on your players, not just physically, but mentally especially. I feel like this is a team with nothing left to prove, especially in the regular season. So my prediction, what I kind of expect to happen with the Lightning, is they sort of just fly under the radar throughout the regular season, obviously still get into the playoffs, but then once they get there, really gear down and take it up a notch and try to go for a three-peat. Getting into the top 2 seeds now, finishing 2nd place in the Atlantic this season, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that obviously has their playoff struggles, but let's be real, when it comes to the regular season, this is one of the best teams in the league. I don't expect that to change this upcoming season. I do think they're going to miss Zach Hyman, but I feel like they're going to miss him more off the ice and in the locker room than on the ice. I feel like on the ice, they have enough firepower to kind of make up for that loss. And overall, I feel like Kyle Dubas did a pretty good job this offseason finding value signings, because that's obviously what you have to do when you're a cap-strapped team. Michael Bunting looked very good in the preseason. So did Nick Ritchie and Andre Kasha. I think those guys are going to bring a lot of depth to this team behind the superstars. If they can play defense and get the type of goaltending that they did last season, I see no reason why the Maple Leafs can't be a top 2 team in the Atlantic. And now obviously finishing 1st place in the Atlantic Division by process of elimination, I have the Florida Panthers. I'm pretty high on this team. Obviously last year they were one of the best regular season teams in the league, but unfortunately they were rewarded for that with playing the Tampa Bay Lightning in the 1st round of the playoffs. I think this team is hungry and eager to prove that last year was not a fluke. They also improved over the offseason, getting Sam Reinhart from the Buffalo Sabres. That was a really big pickup for them. They're also going to have Sam Bennett for the full season, who was a trade deadline acquisition by the Panthers last year, and he played fantastic when he got to Florida. And also, Aaron Ekblad is going to be back from injury, and before he got injured last season, he was an early season Norris Trophy candidate. And also, on top of everything I just said, I feel like the regular season actually matters for the Florida Panthers. Again, for them to prove that last season wasn't a fluke, to prove that they can be consistently a top team. When it comes to Toronto, Tampa Bay, I feel like the regular season just doesn't really matter all that much to those players. They just want to get to the playoffs. That is where those teams have something to prove. But like I said, when it comes to Florida, I feel like they have something to prove in the regular season, and I think they're going to do exactly that. I expect them to be the best team in the Atlantic this season. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those were my predictions for the standings in the Atlantic Division for the upcoming NHL season. If you disagree with some of my picks, like I said at the start of the video, just be sure to get down there in the comment section down below and let me know what your predictions look like. And also let me know which division you guys want to see next. We got 2 left. Do you want me to do the Metro next or the Central?